say in Imperial Valley has learned, and you yourself have learned moving forward, and how to better coordinate, communicate with someone, say like the EPA, right, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, or some of the state agencies? What are some of the lessons that we can learn moving forward?
Wow, that's a question that demands a long answer. Over there, that demands a long answer, and you know what I can share is the experience that we as an organization, and also coming from a similar community, Imperial County. You know, sometimes you think you live in the worst conditions, and then you see a community that's even worse than the community you come from. And I think one of the lessons that we've learned is really taking ownership of the issues and learning what they are. A lot of times we depend on organizations that sometimes come from the outside, and with all good intentions, thinking that have all the answers. And unless the community steps up and starts learning how government functions, how planning functions. Just a week ago we had a workshop on the California Environmental Quality Act, which is it's a crucial piece of document in California, which is really the best document in the United States that is required when any new large development, or that any development that's going to cause any significant impact to the environment. And that's such an important document that most communities don't understand it or don't even know that it exists. And it's a document that allows for a community to participate. And there's still I think when we talk about victories, I think sometimes it's in terms like for Western Environmental, had that not been in tribal land, I think there'd be a much more significant success, though we've come a long way, because I think
because we wouldn't have to deal with the sovereignty issues of it being tribal land, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I think what happens is the fact that you include tribal or another government, it just makes it just that much more complicated. And so I think had it not been in tribal, we would be dealing with probably a success that might even, well, if I've been no question about it, that had it not been there, we could very clearly point out that the Department of Toxics failed, that they failed this community, and that there was a clear problem that was empowered by the agency. And not to point fingers, but ultimately there was miscommunication there, and as DTAC has pointed out on many occasions, that they dropped the ball. They dropped the ball. But because you add that whole layer of the tribal sovereignty, immediately the state or Department of Toxics is in a position where they basically have to ask permission so that they can get in. So everything that has been done to this point has been a matter of permissions. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's it's something that is complicated. In terms of government, I think it's very important that we do recognize that government is shrinking. You know, there's less money. We hear it. We've been hearing it for years. I've been hearing more clearly since 2007. And so as a result of that, we have to be better at accessing those resources, because we have to remember that government is of everyone. And so sometimes when we go to government and asking for help, you know, you have industry doing the same thing. You know, they're seen as, and we've seen it in national news where you say, well, this corporate, you know, there's that debate whether they're actually a citizen or not, right? And so I think, you know, there's a lot of relevance to that, because just as we're here asking government to come here, we don't have the financial resources to fly to Sacramento, to fly to Washington. A lot of corporate interests do. You know, and you know, I've seen it quoted that they say that Western Environmental is a $1 billion business. Wow, that's remarkable. I'm pretty sure they can pay for many trips to do lobbying in both Sacramento and Washington. And so it does put this community in disadvantage. So we have to be better. We have to be better.
How can you be better? Are you talking about folks making a point to find out when the public hearings are for our next project and showing up at those, or are you talking about maybe you can talk about Ivan Online. I mean, what are the sort of the ways of engagement that could go on, especially for folks that feel like there's no way to get out of this, or there's no hope as far as getting government here to address some of these issues.
Right, so I'll answer in two ways. I think the way we can get better is, first of all, is understanding the limitations and how far government is willing to go. I think as communities, sometimes we're led to believe that just because we make a phone call, government is going to take action, they're going to fix a problem. But a lot of times, it's the fact that we just were not involved that created the problem in the first place. And obviously, there's many factors that influence that. What Cesar was mentioning, just to
By the way, Cesar is Eduardo.
Eduardo, I'm sorry. Eduardo.
Luis calls him Cesar.
Cesar is Eduardo, the same person.
So Eduardo was mentioning about education and obviously health factors, many factors that come into play why a community is not part of the conversation. And again, it's these very communities that are targeted, because they are targeted, because they didn't get involved. And so, but the other thing that we're doing as well is when we say trying to become better, is first of all learning as organizations, grassroots organizations working in the community, how can we better get responses from government? And one of the ways that we've done it is by creating a system that addresses some of the issues in terms of the fact that we have less government. So we deployed a database, and one of the ways that the database has worked is that it made government more transparent, it's made it more accountable, but it also has included a diversity of stakeholders, of people that belong to industry, academics, government, nonprofits, and so we're all working together so that whenever a report comes in, first of all, it's transparent. The whole community can look at it, because the way the old systems were is that you submit a report into the governmental systems. A lot of times you never hear back.
By report,
ever.
you're saying something like, for example, that there's fumes coming out of Western Environmental, my kid got sick.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So one of the issues we came across first was, well, how can the community know? They're not experts. So we were able to bring government on board. And one of the ways we were able to do it is saying, hey, you can't do environmental protections the way you did because you don't have the money. So you need the community. You need the partnerships. You need the eyes and ears out there to make your job better and to be able to do the same level of environmental protection as they once did. And so when a report does come in, let's say it fumes, it comes into the database, then it goes into the governmental agency. In the case of Coachella, it goes to the Water Quality Control Board. And they believe in this, and so they think that makes their job better. So they assign somebody, in this case is John Roque. He is what we call the community problem solver. He looks at the reports, and they serve as a hub. And as a hub, they either take ownership because it's a water quality problem, or something that's within their jurisdiction, or let's say if it's an air problem, well, they would forward it to the appropriate agency. So that's how the system works. And again, what that does is it's empowering the community, it's making government work in a more optimal way, and at the same time, it's educating the community, because in the process, they learn how the problem gets resolved.
And it's making others accountable, too.
It's making, exactly.
And I think I remember you telling me that this is a model that was created in the developing world, in Africa, right?
Right. So we started using Google Earth to map different issues that were coming up, and actually it was somebody in a governmental agency, Department of Toxics. And so even though sometimes we agree, or sometimes we disagree, we had times to agree with them as well, because there's a lot of good people who just want to do the right thing. In this case, Ryan Atencio, who was working with the Department of Toxics, came across Ushahidi, which means witness. And so this platform that was being used solely for...
Ushahidi means witness.
Ushahidi means witness in Swahili. So they created this database on open source. It's accessible to anyone. It's no cost. It did require some programming. So we did partner with C Data Solutions. And then we started exploring the possibilities of turning what they were using for crisis mapping. So it's being used in Kenya for crimes, for violence, and also was used in Mexico for border fraud. So it was more for crisis mapping. So we took that and started using for mapping incidents, but at the same time for solving them. So we started looking at it from an enforcement standpoint.
Great. Thank you. I wanted to see if anyone has any comments, things you want to bring up, questions, si tienen preguntas, comentarios.
have a comment then. And
Sure.
this is in regards to the island, and with all due respect with what Lisa said, there are some of us that believe in the community that believe that the Ivan program here in the Coachella Valley is actually a detriment to a lot of the housing, Polanco Park and mobile home parks, because in the last few months, all that we have reported in the Ivan is some water being leaked in a Polanco Park, and a lot of those Polanco Parks, there's 3 of them that are actual
They're mobile parks?
mobile home parks, including Duros, St. Anthony's, and Los Gatos. They're all in receivership, and any type of documentation that's put up on the Ivan online can actually be used against it, and it could actually, it's a real touchy situation because it could actually end up in the parks being closed. Documentation recorded so that the courts can be used against the parks, so the courts can order the parks closed, and the hundreds of people that live there being displaced, and the bottom line is that there's no housing. And so it's a double-edged sword. It's not, I don't think it's a panacea for this area. It may be good for the 3 toxic dumps, the Lawson's, the Western Environmental, and the Mount Cerote over there on
Mount San Diego.
Mount San Diego.
¿Cómo le dijo el otro nombre que
Mount
dijo?
Cerote. That was the original name that we gave it 15 years ago when all that human waste started coming from San Diego. And so there's some problems. There's some problems. The reason that there is no housing is because there has never been a strategic plan to develop affordable housing, because there has never been a strategic plan to develop the infrastructure. This whole area does not have infrastructure. There's no sewage, there's no potable water in many of the areas. And so everybody's living in mobile home parks with individual wells and septic systems serving the park. So there's a lot of issues in regards to that. I agree that it might have been good in Imperial County, and I work with Reese, and I have a lot of respect for the work he does, but I have a problem with the way it's being used on here.
Right, and you're saying, that's interesting, you're saying that's mostly because if you have a lot of folks in a community living in whichever conditions, but living in a place, and all of a sudden you can't come up with a better solution for them and you're kicking them out, then you're leaving them without any housing at all. So there's displacing folks.
There's a possibility of displacing massive amounts of individual families that represent hundreds of individuals, and there's no housing in the area. The bottom line, the housing authority here in research economic reports, they have like a waiting list of 17,000 people, and then the other major housing provider, the Coachella Housing Coalition, they reported having like 20,000 people in a waiting list. So there's really no housing because there has never been any plan to develop affordable housing in eastern Coachella Valley. And all these dumps have been happening for the last 18 years. I remember when Dawson was burning every day, most of the waste was being brought from all the western part of the county, from all those 170 golf places that they have over there, and it was burning day and night until it stopped. And now the EPA says that it's going to cost $40 million to clean it up, and the individual that owned that place is dead. And so nothing's going to happen unless EPA moves on it.
Do you have something to add?
Yeah, can I respond to that a bit? That was a lot of information and a really good overview of the housing dilemma sort of in the East Valley. One of the things that we tried to address from the outset when we started bringing new enforcement officials into the area and new activists and new academics who weren't as familiar with our area and with our housing challenges, there's often an approach to our mobile home park communities that the perspective from the outside is often that, well, these are in such bad condition, nobody should live in them. So let's get them out. And in fact, the County of Riverside itself took that approach for a while, especially in the late 90s, and started going into mobile home parks around in the unincorporated areas of Riverside County and shutting them down immediately based on the health and safety violations present. So the result of that were hundreds or thousands of people being forcibly displaced, as Rodolfo mentioned, from those mobile home parks, and they were pushed into tribal mobile home parks, where now no standards actually even apply at all.
I see. So really things got worse.
There's always a risk or a challenge or something that we're always really pendant about, is that outsiders will tend to want to close down the communities where we don't have any other options. So one challenge that we've seen with the task force is that some of the newer enforcement agencies or agents originally took that perspective. And so we were taking them to parks that are already models, are already developing in the right direction, or where we have pre-established relationships, or where we're litigating against the owner. So they're already well-known parks where we've seen a lot of progress. And one of the most well-known of which is Duraville. Another is St. Anthony Mamon Park.
And that's just down the street, right?
Just down the street from in Mecca. All the parks in our valley have violations. And so what we've seen in some areas is just a bit of frustration that we highlighted some of our communities as communities that are on the right track. But they nonetheless have some violations, and bringing in outside officials has resulted in some consequences that we might have anticipated of it, but that we were hoping would not occur. Mm-hmm. And that's been one of the big challenges. Another challenge with the Ivan model is just getting the entire community to understand what it is and what the purpose of it is and how to use it. That's been a slow process. Mm-hmm. So we've been working on it, and Luis and Eduardo have done a lot of outreach to get community members oriented to the program, but the number of reports that are made are still limited to like a handful of people that really know how to use the program.
I wonder why that is. Eduardo. I wonder why that is, explaining Ivan or getting folks to access it.
Well, actually, I've been in contact with people that, first of all, it's a web-based application. I mean, you have to have access to the internet. So
right.
It's being more common, especially with the internet access in cell phones, but it's still complicated to some people. So what we are trying to do now is that you can submit a report by going on the internet, but you can also submit it by phone, by a text message, or by a phone call. So that's why we'll be focusing. So if there's people that is not comfortable using a computer and going online, they can make a call or send a text message. That will be easier. And we are expecting to increase the number of reports, because as it has been said, we are in the community, and we are the eyes of the agencies. So if they don't have enough resources to cover the whole valley, at least we can point them in the right direction. You know what? Okay, you don't have resources to cover all, but I have a problem here, and he has a problem there. So they can focus the resources they have. So that's another approach that we're taking regarding the Ivan model.
I wanted to ask some of you guys, you Coachella Incorporated guys, I'm wondering if there's kind of a generational shift for those of you that may have grown up here younger. How do you see some of these environmental issues? I mean, how engaged are you in some of these issues and say reporting things or finding them to be really problematic for your health or your environment? I'm curious.
I've done a story with Celia.
What's your name?
Alejandra Marcon. And it really, really impacted me because I got to actually meet her kids, and the kids were like getting sick from the waste. And I feel like it really opened my eyes. So being involved in this really did get me really interested. I want to be part of the whole movement. It makes me really, really sad. This is where I come from. So it is kind of like the generation, I feel like. And then also I've been to your home, I don't know if you remember, I was taking pictures. This kid is so amazing. Like all these kids, they actually care. The kids that live here, they know what's going on. It's just like, I don't know, it's very, very sad.
So there's a very big awareness over this issue.
In the valley it is. It's just, it just feels, like even the kids know what's going on. And people out there, like people in power don't understand. And these kids, I don't know, it's crazy. I don't understand that.
Is that kind of what prompted you, what motivated you to start reporting on it? I'm curious.
Yeah, actually the whole story about her kids really, really impacted me. It took me about, it was kind of like a long report. That's when I got to know her family.
Thanks. I don't know if any other questions, comments?
I find it kind of interesting with the town of Mecca having these issues and having such a rich history in organizing. As many know, UFW started its barracks out of here, and having such leadership and still having the trouble of organizing itself, because it can have great effect. Leaders that exist already, and hearing the story of the man right behind me, that should inoculate a whole community to create change, whether the young, the old, the middle. It should be moving people to do that, to mobilize the masses to be at the supervisor's office, to be at the congressman's office, and be able to incorporate all that history, all that lesson that's already been taught. There's a man back here that's been with the UFF for many years that can assist all that exists here, all that history, the knowledge of mobilizing, the knowledge of moving the community. But just those leaders, like Megan had said earlier, they're not coming together. They're not.
You mean the activists?
Yeah, the activists are not coming together. Whether it's egos or whether it's issues of he's here, she's here stuff. I think it should go beyond that, and people should start coming together, because it is an issue. I don't live here. I've had the fortune to organize here in this area through many different organizations, and I see the problem. And as much as I willingly love to be here organizing, it has to come from the community. The young, as she has said, has to be able to inoculate herself and those around her, which all the Coachella Incorporated and everything else, to be able to start mobilizing. People have to move, and it's unfortunate, but they're not. There has to be, people have to see a connection. It's beyond Western Environmental. Are you guys questioning the growers? Cesar Chavez was fighting for the pesticides in the mid-'80s, and they can never connect that all the pesticides that are still being used somehow form cancer clusters. So it goes beyond. It's a combination of many things. It could be Western Environmental. It could be the pesticides that are being spilled on a daily basis, but nobody goes against the growers, because what Megan said earlier, because they're scared. It's their job. But at one point, when it's your health, at some time, you have to say, you know what, my health comes first, and you have to start being mobilized. And I think it's time for the community of Mecca to start mobilizing the masses throughout, from here all the way through the Coachella Valley.
Arturo, right? Arturo, that's your name, correct? You had mentioned that a lot of folks are intimidated or scared, right, because of their immigration status sometimes. But listening to you, I'm thinking it must be as much that as it is just like feeling totally overwhelmed between like having to choose between like maybe political or activism in terms of, or labor activism, your working conditions, and environmental issues and housing. And I mean, it's so much, it's overwhelming.
It's a big game. Couple months ago, it's the budget for the Coachella Valley, 60-something million, whatever the money is. The organized people in our community decide make a trial. We call it this day trial. Our people is dying, sick. We don't have place to live. We don't have roads. We don't have anything. And these people want to make a nice trial for driving his gold cars in the Coachella Valley.
Did that pass?
How
It
do
was
you
being
feel
debated. Did it pass?
like a human when you have a dump site in your backyard, and not only in your backyard, all around you, your neighborhood community? And when we find this small solution of this can help our community, that not help me, that's help the whole community. Some people with money, with political connections, decide, oh, let's go make this wonderful trial so the people that are touristic, the people with money, they can drive his gold car and that. How you think like community I feel?
This was that mitigation, right? Can you talk a little bit about that, Eduardo?
Well, that money that Arturo was talking about. It's part of a mitigation fund that originated from the construction of the Sentinel power plant in the Palm Springs area.
So basically to try to make up for the pollution they
Yeah,
generated in
it's kind of like,
constructing
I'm gonna make pollution here, but I'm gonna, combat pollution there, so it will be like, supposedly
Evened out.
will be like even, yeah, but it's, anyway. So a mitigation fund was established. It's about 53 million, and it was to be divided. I think it was a specific amount for the close proximity area, and then another percentage. It was 30% for the close proximity area, 30% for the environmental justice areas, and then 40% it will be dispersed at the discretion of the AQMD. And the trail that Arturo was mentioning, they want to take as much as 40 million to like a down payment, because the whole trail will be around 83 million, so they will have to pull resources from other places. But that will be, it's like a slap in the face, using 40 million that can be used, for example, maybe to clean up Lawson, to pave roads, to help with transportation. And instead of that, they are trying to push an initiative to build a trail that will be operating from Palm Springs or Desert Hot Springs all the way to Coachella. And in case it materializes, it will be constructed starting in the west and finishing in the east, so it's another layer of insult to the whole problem. And we went to Diamond Bar. I was in Diamond Bar in an AQMD meeting. Luis was there, Jesse Valadez from North Shore was there, people from Loma Linda University, from the city of Coachella, from the city of Desert Hot Springs, all those people went there, and we were there and trying to, first of all, have AQMD spend the funds in this area, because there was the possibility that the funds will be spent in any part of some of the funds in any part of the AQMD area, which is huge. So we managed to get them to spend it here, but then we still have to fight for an alternative to this day trail, which, by the way, tomorrow it's the due date for the project. So let's hope that the projects presented as an alternative for the trail are taken into account.
And just for clarification, when Eduardo is saying that they are pushing the trail, probably the biggest proponent of the trail is our Riverside County Supervisor, John Benoit, who is a member of the board of the Air Quality Management District. So theoretically speaking, a person who's on the board of the AQMD and making decisions about this funding should not be a proponent of one or the other of the different propositions or applications for the funding. And not only that, but the supervisor also represents our East Valley communities who have been suffering in very close proximity to hazardous waste dumps and in terrible housing conditions and in dusty communities and under clouds of pesticides for decades. And our supervisor is supporting a golf cart trail.
Eduardo mentions that the Disney Trail, but the pathway or bike trail. And I think there are a lot of priorities. We work with Loma Linda University and brought in a number, I think up to 70 stakeholders of diverse backgrounds. And they all came up with like over 12 different priorities, and none of them included the trail.
They were more urgent for the community.
Yeah, there was paving project, there was paving, the dumps, and like 10 other projects that were superseded those priorities. The other thing is that I think it's very important that the community, as they're seeing a lot of the momentum, a lot of the organizing, that they also get involved with the government agencies. organizations like ours, like CRLA and others that are out there that are already having conversations with government agencies. I welcome the community, because it shouldn't just be one person, it shouldn't be two people, it should be an entire community coming together. But again, we have these different competitive interests where in one side of, let's say like in this region, for example, which is not the only region that this type of dynamic occurs, but you have people who are highly educated, who are either attorneys, who are doctors, who are politicians, through education and by trade. And a lot of times their voice is stronger because they have stronger influential bargaining chips than a community like the Eastern Coachella Valley, for example. But we can make a difference by coming together, by working with the community, by helping them better educate them. And a lot of times it's just by giving them the tools and how to communicate, how to better articulate their message. And of course, it's also bringing the health agencies, because there's an entire government out there that we do not access. A lot of times we don't access because we don't even know where they're at.
Right, but how do you say work with the public health department if they themselves are lacking the data, right? I mean, that was my own challenge as a reporter, trying to get information in this community. There isn't. They haven't recorded it.
No, absolutely. And a lot of times, my experience has been like county public health departments. I have not had the greatest experience, though. I think the Riverside County is a better example. They're more diverse than Imperial County. I mean, Imperial County really just doesn't do a whole lot other than vaccines and a couple other tobacco, things that don't affect the industry, don't affect agriculture. And it shouldn't be a trade-off. It shouldn't be food versus health. It shouldn't be food or agriculture and jobs versus good-paying jobs and protecting the public's health. It should never be a compromise. It should always, everything should be mitigated, and we should be able to create good jobs. But in terms of the state, for example, there are limited resources, but there are agencies like the Environmental Health Investigations Branch, where the sole purpose is having an entire branch of people that are dedicated to doing research projects, but the community doesn't know how to access them. Who knows how to access them? Communities that really, they're just trying to be better than they already are, which is in better conditions. So we need to show the community the pathway to accessing those little resources that are out there, like from the CDC, Center for Disease Control has funding. I mean, you have a multitude of agencies, of government folks, that a lot of times they're just sitting there without a job because nobody's calling them in. And you have to understand that the community needs to get better at this. And this is what we're trying to do in our messages. Government is not going to step into a community and say, you have a problem, because then the private sector or other interests will say, what are you doing? How come you're favoring them? So we as community, we have to be better at asking them to come in, because a lot of them, you'd find that they're eager to come into these communities. Different governments like the federal government and the state are eager to come into local districts. But until we understand that there's this respect that occurs where they're not just going to step in until the community calls them so they can justify it, they're not going to do it, because then they expose themselves being the ones that say, yeah, I'm coming into that community, and then it becomes a personal matter between governments. So as long as we understand it. And the other thing is also, I know that Ivan is a tool that is out there, and I know that it's recently become a concern. But I think it's also an educational tool. And I think it also provides an opportunity, because I think the majority or most of the problems, first of all, it did expose to a higher level the issues of Western. And it is exposing to a higher level the issues of Lawson. But at the same time, I think it gives opportunity to, let's say, park owners to fix those small problems and make them a success. Because I think the more we create successes, like say we got clogged pipes, well, we fix them, and then becomes a success. That means that that agency is being effective, and that, whether they're in receivership or not, I think that can be cashed in and say, look, we have right, or we can handle the job of managing these parks. And I think so I think it just depends on the lens you look at it, but I think there's opportunity for all. And ultimately, models like the Ivan are changing the way government works. They're giving the community more access where there wasn't before. And so government, again, is I think is looking at these types of models to do their job, because they can't keep environmental enforcement as they once did.
Mm-hmm. I think we only have like 2 minutes, literally, but you wanted to add something, sir, right?
Yes, we're from North Shore, representing the community, and appreciate Reese giving us an avenue, for us to express our needs up there in North Shore, which are flooding We're right in the flood area, you know, every time it rains. And that's a big concern of ours right there, because it takes a while for them, you know, kind of get out there and, you know, help us out with it. They get out there, but it takes a while. And also the Salton Sea, you know, we're right there next to Salton Sea, and as a community, also Mecca, if we would join in and help each other, you know, and bring this up, because I see in the future, it's going to affect not only North Shore, Mecca, but all of it's just going to compound, you know, and it's a big resource we have right there. Right now, the state park's closing. We need help, you know, as a community. We could join and help it, you know, stay alive for maybe another year or whatever we could, you know. It'd be a big asset, you know, for the kids going out there. They fish, you know. There's a lot of recreation, you know, for people out there. And also we have the die out, the fish die out, you know, and we have, you know, the flies, and there's a lot of issues out there
There's
too.
a lot of
you know.
environmental
Yeah, and then now with, you know, all the water being, you know, the water issues, you know, in Carroll County, you know, that's less water we get, you know, runoff going into the Salton Sea. That means that it's receding every year even faster. And if we could join, you know, as a community, not as state or government employees, you know, working to come up with solutions, I think we would be more, you know, knowledgeable, you know, have hands-on, you know, better ideas how to, you know, what we could do, you know, come together. Because I don't think there's a community, any kind of community activity, not activity, but I mean some involvement, discussions, how we can come up with some kind of solution.
You mean between Imperial and Eastern Coachella Valley?
Well,
or
just us here, you know, the two cities that are right now are going to be affected, you know, just
Sure.
Mecca and North Shore. You know. Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
I don't know if anyone has any more questions, comments. Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate you all coming out tonight. And I want to thank Megan and Eduardo, and really encourage you all, you know, as a station, KPCC, and myself as a reporter, and my colleague here, Steven Cuevas, we're going to keep on reporting on a lot of the issues in this community, and really encourage you to contact us. I mean, think of us as an Ivan of sorts, I guess, too. I have a bunch of cards. If you all can email me, call me at any point. I'm, you know, really, one of the main reasons we wanted to do this is to really kind of see some of you face to face and have a chance to speak. So I hope to hear from many of you, and thanks again.
When is this going to air?
Well, I had a series of 3 stories that aired already this week. I'm happy to send the link around, or you can go on KPCC and search under my name. But basically, Steven right now is doing a lot of follow-up reporting, Steven Cuevas, and I will be doing some follow-up reporting next week. We have a forum much like this one in LA, in which we're going to be bringing a lot of the discussion, basically video and audio of what we all said here tonight, to basically present it to the folks in LA and kind of continue the conversation. But this itself we're going to be using bits of this for future reporting, but it's not going to air just, you know, as a 1.5 hour, you know, chunk of broadcast. It won't, but it will keep informing our reporting in the future. Thank you.